they are, in fact, very different. I also promised myself that I would not vote on a book I had not read. So I purchased Melissa and I read the entire book. And I have to tell you, I have read a lot of middle grades books for that 4th through 8th grade age group with my children and did not enjoy most of them. Melissa is an amazing book. I recommend that anyone who's curious read it. The characters are so well written that even as an adult, I cared about them, which is very unusual in children's books. I usually feel like it's kind of silly and surface level, but it was excellent. But that's not relevant to the hearing. What's relevant to the hearing is, does it violate state statute? And it does not. It does not violate state statute for library materials. Now, can this be used as instructional material? Could a teacher do a novel study on this? Not according to our state statute. Can it exist in our libraries? Absolutely, according to state statute, it can. There is nothing in this book that violates state statute. I'm also speaking as the parent of a 4th grader who is the age group targeted. She's on the youngest end of the age group that would be recommended to read this book. And when I finished reading it, I handed it to her and said, you can add this to your bookshelf and read it if you're interested. There is nothing in it that I would find objectionable. And if it was moved from the library that my child had access to, I would be very upset as a parent because it doesn't violate state statute. And I understand that different parents have different standards for what they want their children exposed to. And my standards don't apply to Dr. Marule, and that is fine. That is why state statute also requires us to keep an online accessible database of all of our classroom and school library materials. And we already had one for our libraries, but our classroom libraries, our teachers and media specialists worked their tails off getting all of those titles updated, approved by media specialists, and available for parents to peruse so that any parent can determine that they don't want their child to have access to any number of those materials. And you can sign up that your child is not allowed access to whatever titles you desire. I support parental rights. Parental rights to me means my rights to parent my children and your rights to parent your children. Telling my child that she can't have access to an age-appropriate book that does not violate state statute violates my parental rights. Because not every parent can just go to Amazon and purchase Melissa if their child wants to read it and they're okay with that. So, I want to say, I just wanted to make it clear to the public that I do not vote without reading all of the material presented, including what was emailed to me by Dr. Marule. And Dr. Marule, as an aside, you'll be getting an email from me because Ms. Maite invited me into the class to read, and I want to make sure that the book I'm reading is one that you are okay with. So you'll be getting an email from me, but that's an aside. But that's what parental rights look like, is making sure that parents get to approve what their children have access to. So I want you to know that I take this very seriously. I read everything you send to me. I've researched the statute, and legal language is very hard to understand, so I have asked experts numerous questions, and I have read the book in question. So I take my responsibility to keeping our students safe very seriously, and I will be voting to keep Melissa on our school library shelves because I can't find any reason that it violates state statute and would present a safety issue to our children.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwell. Ms. Abbitt?
I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book. She immersed her body in the warm water and tried not to think about what was between her legs, but it was there, bobbing in front of her. Hey, Rick, it looks like someone is finally starting to grow balls. This is in a library for kindergarten through 5th grade. Nothing makes her more uncomfortable than when boys talked about what was in her underpants. Now, do most kids in elementary school have conversations with boys about what's in their underpants? George had been reading websites about transitioning since Scott taught her how to clear the web browser history on Mom's computer. What she has between her legs was nobody's business but her and her boyfriend's. Now, and this is Kay Abbitt's opinion on this. I would not want my child to go into a library and pick up that book and start reading that. And it has nothing to do with a child that's unsure about her sexuality, that may be trans. I would not like it if it were about a kid who was very sure of her sexuality. That has no place in a library. And back here in some of the notes it says, this book speaks to friendship, kindness, and acceptance. There are so many books that speak to that without the sexual element in it. And so I believe in parental rights. I'm going to tell you that I'm very offended by the way that Dr. Morrell has been treated. I mean, she comes in here and it's like this environment. It's just, parents have rights, and they can have rights like you have, Dr. Rockwell. They can have rights like Dr. Morrell, but everybody needs to be treated with respect. And so I'm going to vote not to keep in the library because I'm old-fashioned, and that's just how I am. There was another book that came up that I voted to keep in a library because I read it, just like Dr. Rockwell. I'm not going to vote on something if I don't read it. And I did vote on the other book to keep it in the library. And I'm not, you don't have to worry because I'll be outnumbered, but those are my thoughts on it. I think that in a school, I would not want my child who's a second grader, a third grader, or even a fourth grader to be reading sexual passages in a library book at a school.
Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Seeing no other lights, Dr. Rockwell, you got your lights still on?
I just wanted to clarify because one of the passages that was read was actually two separate passages that were connected together. Right, but the way it was read, it made it sound like there was someone else in the bathroom when Melissa was taking a bath, and there was not. The comment about someone finally grew some balls was because Melissa got into a fight because she stood up to the class bully. And that comment was made as slang, as a colloquialism, not in reference to actual genitals.
I don't think that we should have things that indicate to fourth graders, third graders, or second graders that boys are trying to get in your underpants and that nobody but a boyfriend should be able to do that. I'm just telling you how I feel. I'm old-fashioned. That's just how I feel.
Okay. All right, hearing no other, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Yeah.
Along with what the officer said.
Okay, all opposed?
Nay.
4-1, Ms. Green, you got it? All right, thank you all.